Ahoy! Today we had our first attempts of the Sandworm on the live servers, where the fight is significantly harder than before. It was buffed in various ways, and I wanted to share with you the best fight that we had so far. I was planning to release my full Sandworm guide today, but I'm going to delay that for 1 or 2 days because I found out some new things that I want to test first in our tries in the next days. So I want to give you the most detailed information possible, so I'm going to hold that off just a little bit. Because this fight has very much changed since the PTR version in many ways. Even though mechanics are mostly consistent, it's a lot more difficult, a lot more challenging. You can see, for example, here we have the acid lick. That was not really a threat on PTR, but now if that is ever not on the tank, everyone else kind of needs to dodge out because it ticks extremely fast. I'm running a kind of support-ish build with sword and shield, mostly applying debuffs while still doing some DPS, so I won't be doing the highest damage here. I will run a spear build in the next couple days as well. I also forgot to put up my major trophies, unfortunately, so my damage is a little bit lower than it should have been. But yeah, you can see the start of the fight is still pretty much the same. You're kind of just stacking under the boss with the melees. You have the ranged players on the pads in the back, and you have the adds that are coming in. Most of the adds are really still not a threat, but you want to get the sword guys, and you can see it there, picked up very quickly, the little empowerment sword, so to speak, that gives you a buff for 45 seconds. You can see it down in my hotbar. That empowers you and also makes you apply rend and gives you, I think, extra acid resist and whatnot. So that's something you always want to pick up, and a major mechanic of the fight, which will significantly buff your damage with everything you do. There are some weird situations where it doesn't really seem to increase your damage the same way. Not sure what that is, but right now you can see, for example, crits for 7k there in between. So that's definitely working as intended. One thing you'll notice that occasionally people will roll out of the raid. That is because the worm is spitting acid balls. I'm one of the few people who is allowed to stay on the boss because my weaken and my rend need to be consistently applied, and therefore I kind of get a pass, whereas a lot of other people will have to take care of that instead. I'm also running a Trenchant Rend Sword. I will show you my loadout at the end, so that's pretty interesting. So I'm going to heavy attack a lot in between, switch off weapons and switch onto it again to apply that consistently. And here you can see once again we have the shield guys. Take those down in order to get the buff from the sword here. Grab that real quick and you have the 45 seconds buff again. He does do this head swipe occasion now, you can see it right here, that goes through the raid. This is a completely new attack, and this attack is actually pretty dangerous if you don't have a lot of strike ward. But what we're doing for this one is we're running full strike gems plus a strike amulet in order to minimize the damage from that, so you can see that doesn't really do much. That leads to some other issues though, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. It's probably not the loadout we're going to go with in the next days because we figured out some other problems with it. Now you can see us stacking along the wall here. This is something we figured out that works quite well, much better than everything we tried before. So the Sandworm will pop up in its next phase, and you'll have to kill 2 scorpions. And he pops up under where people are standing. And if everyone is close to the wall in the beginning, then he will pop up close to the wall, which then gives you more space later to kind of use the area and stand in different places. Because if you spread out too early, you can see you have these acid pools everywhere, and they do a lot of acid burn, or a quick acid burn. You can see right here, I roll through that and I immediately get acid burn because I don't have the chitin either. So you kind of have to really be careful where you have these pools. They can't be in front of the stairs, they can't be in many other places, and we just figured that the best way to place them is by standing close to the wall initially, where they are less of a problem. We had some cleaner runs in that regard, but this run went well in other regards, so it was fine. You can see me rolling into the acid there briefly and already struggling in various ways. So, but I'm kind of lucky here because my acid burners is halfway down already. I don't want to pop the acid changer at this point because there's not really much that I would benefit from. One of our tanks is down here, our off tank, Sholik is down. So we can't res him at the moment since we have to do the next phase first. That's kind of making things more risky. And in this phase we were very lucky because in many situations the Sandworm would have spat at us, and I have acid burn on me, so I would just straight up died. But it actually worked out well, and Super Omega was able to hold the aggro for the entire phase. We got the stamina break buff very quickly. The button pushers did their job very well, and resulting from that we were able to break the stamina very quickly without anyone going down. This is usually the phase where we get wiped, but we figured out some things on how to solve that better. We'll test that tomorrow, and if we find the right way to do so, then I'll let you know. Of course, I'll tell you what we tried and how it worked. And yeah, then we go back to the ground phase, and for a while things are similar, but you can see here, Super couldn't get aggro back right away, because obviously he needs to build up aggro again against an entire raid. And the lick went on the other side, so we had to back out. We got a few people that were going down with the head swipes as well. So it got a bit messy briefly, but we kind of still managed to recover fairly quickly here. So it went very well. Super got aggro back. We could all start fighting again and got some more damage on the Sandworm. So far, very nice. The fight feels a lot more engaging, a lot more things you need to pay attention to, even though, again, from my perspective, it may not quite look like that. You are consistently going for the shield guys in between, because you need to get the sword buff every single time. Very, very important mechanic in order to significantly increase your DPS. You can see me quickly looking for the orbs there, because we had some moments where people were struggling with them a bit, and I figured maybe I can help out just for a second before I go back to applying the debuffs. But it was already too late. They were already way gone. So what we can see here is that once again, we have a bit of room to stack, but it is also more dangerous in this phase, I think, because it seems like the Sandworm may be doing the head swipe a bit more often later in the fight. Not sure if that's the case, or we're just more unlucky in that regard, but there's a bit more going on in that regard, I think. Other than that, the Sandworm up until this point kind of does the same mechanics. There are other mechanics that happen later in the fight, such as, for example, the rocks that you need to mine. Yeah, here we can see one of the other headbutts, the head swipe, once again knocking down a few people. So this is going to be very, very risky if we're running less strike protection, but we'll likely have to, so we'll see how that will go. Gotta be a bit lucky there, because one of the head slams just does an insane amount of damage, and if it just hits you at the wrong moment, you're pretty much done for. You can see that here, it's still pretty much half healthing, and then the swipe, the follow-up swipe, can really hurt, so you gotta be good with the dodges. And we're getting close to half health here, and what unfortunately happened is that some people in the back went down, including some of our healers, so we decided to reset, because it wasn't really worth continuing at that point, because we wouldn't have been able to finish the fight either way. So we reset at 50, and that's as far as we have gotten so far. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't have enough time to do a lot of runs today, so we only did like 1.5 hours in total, I think. We are going to do a lot more tomorrow though, and maybe we'll be able to actually defeat it then. But now let's talk a little bit about my gear that I was using for the raid. So let's first look at my attributes here. I'm running 250 strength, 165 dex just for a little more DPS, and 100 con. I think I need 100 con just to be safe with the loadout that I have. And these perks are largely irrelevant here, because you can't CC the Sandworm and you can't backstab it. So it's really more about your raw stat distribution. And if we look at my gear in general, then you can see I'm in a light loadout with only light items, because I'm using a round shield that's kind of forced onto me to just run full light gear, which is somewhat annoying, but that's why I want to have 100 con just to be safe. All of this is fist weighted, because as far as we know, no elemental damage in the fight can actually be reduced by elemental armor. It just bypasses aversion, or bypasses armor rating. So physical damage is the only thing that's worth reducing, really. And we're running the full Jaspers at the moment. This is going to change tomorrow. This is not the way that's going to stay. Makes some things very easy, but other things very hard. So we'll see a mix here with some more chitin paddings again and some less Jasper. Now, the most important thing, the core part of my build here, is the Artisan's Round Shield on one hand, which comes with Keen, Vicious and Enchanted. Very, very strong, because you have Vicious and Enchanted together, both damage con. This is kind of the best option right now for a lot of things in general, but also if you cannot get a Bane shield, and there is no Beast Bane shield as far as I'm aware. So this is a very easy to get option for me, because I already have 200 weapon smithing. Very easy way to get a lot of DPS. And yeah, that's what I'm going with. And to complement that, I have this longsword here, which is Beast Bane and Trenchant Rend. I actually have a better spear, but what this does is it gives me another perk that benefits the entire raid. I could not really go for many other useful perks here that increase my damage, because Rogue wouldn't work on the Sandworm, and I'm not running 300 con. So this is something that helps the entire raid, and we want to have this. We want to have this rend, especially in later stages. But on other weapons, there would be more of a damage loss to include it because you can't get another damage con perk instead. So that's what I am running. That is something that works in combination with this particular shield only. I'm running this with an emerald because there are many situations in this fight where you are not full health, and many of the other gems also don't have any major benefits, but the last phase of the fight is something you want to end as quickly as possible, and for that, having that extra damage against targets with low health should be very effective. Same thing here in the bow. We haven't reached the threshold yet to actually get this effect, but yeah, it's going to be great. I have my bow with Beastbane and Chain Ice just in case I ever need to help out with the acid pool, they're called, but the acid blobs that go up in the air, basically the bubbles, because the chains can bounce between them and clear them out much quicker. So yeah, that's just a bit of a nice backup option to have in that case, because I'm not going to use the bow to DPS ever, I'm just going to use it to stem break otherwise. So for my armor, otherwise I have Beast Ward here with Contagious Reverse Stab. I have mostly strength and a little bit of dex in terms of stats. Contagious Reverse Stab is just a little bit extra damage, so why not, really? And then I have Keen Tondo, which increases the crit chance, which also works if someone else is using the rapier, so very beneficial. The Vigor here, I just randomly rolled on that, I got lucky, but it doesn't actually affect anything in the fight, I think, because it's not acid, so it shouldn't actually matter. It's just, I guess, a bonus on top of the other stuff. And then we have Refreshing on the gloves, as well as Refreshing on the legs, as well as Refreshing on the footwear. And this is because you want to have your abilities up as often as possible if you're in a debuffing role. So as much refreshing as possible it is. I'm actually contemplating if it would maybe be worth putting the headgear as refreshing as well instead of Contagious Reverse Stab, lose some damage and get more uptime. But there are some other ways that I could do as well, so I'm not quite that fussed with it. I could, for example, go for Brawler's Memento. That's something I'm considering at the moment, which would take away a little bit of my damage, but would give me enfeebling, so my weaken uptime would be more consistent with Shield Rush. So for my amulet, I just have a health strike protection amulet. The Shaking Dot Cleanse doesn't matter. That's not really something that I'm using in the fight. I don't think that works for anything, but I want to have the strike protection and health. It comes with con, so I just use it as is. And Legate's Ring, obviously, fan favorite. Leeching, slash damage, keen awareness, illegal perk combo here that gives us a very nice damage boost. But again, I might switch that to Brawler's Memento depending on how things go and what we need more. And then for my earring, I just have an earring with Refreshing Toast and Beloved. And I was lucky enough to find one that also had Refreshing Evasion. Cost me a little bit more, but I think it's worth it for this particular fight at least. Because there are some situations where the tank kind of has to grab aggro again quickly, and you don't want to be the one that steals aggro from them. I'm running the Heart Rune of Firestorm here, Cunning. This is just a nice extra empower effect, really, primarily, and some extra damage. So, yeah, it's a weaken too. Yeah, it's good. What can I say? You can obviously run Detonate as well or something like that. You can run some safety and utility, but generally I think Firestorm is a very nice one to have, and the mobility can also be useful. For consumables, I'm running health pots, I'm running regen pots, I'm running acid tincture, extremely important. There are sometimes just situations where you need to cleanse this, and yeah, you need to have them. They're expensive, that's what it is. And I am slotting Beast Ward potions, but so far I don't think I have used them once, because the problem with them is that they override some of the other buffs that you get in the fight. So you want to use them very, very conservatively, only in very, very risky situations, or shortly before you get the other buff again anyways, if you just need to briefly avoid some damage. But yeah, you're not going to be using these much at all. They're more of a backup option that I figured I'm going to have in there just in case. Overall, as you can see, not a lot of legendaries or anything, really just a random roll legendary and primarily legendary jewelry. But I do have this spear that I wanted to specifically roll, which I will use at some point in the future, which has Keen, Vicious, and Beastbane. So that is going to be a very nice one to use as well. I think Keen is particularly good in this fight just because you can't backstab ever, so it just enhances Vicious essentially and various other crit related effects, so that's good in my opinion. For specs, this is my current sword and shield loadout. Mostly really just stuff that increases my damage, very standard stuff here. Core skills that are important. You want to have Tactical Strike, reduce the cooldown of Rolling Blade. You want to have a Tactician, reduce your other cooldowns when using Reverse Stab. So you want to use your other 2 abilities first and Reverse Stab last to reduce them. And you absolutely want to have Improved Rush to apply the weaken with Shield Rush. So those are your core skills here. You want to have Leadership for your team to apply empowers. Everything else is very standard. There's not much of an explanation needed. The only point that I tried here is High Grip. So I was hoping that it would block certain Sandworm projectiles, but I'm not really sure if that's actually possible at all. So this point may be kind of wasted. At the same time, there aren't really many other things that would be relevant that I could put into instead. 15% physical armor is really nothing. So yeah, it doesn't really matter all that much. I could get this point, for example, or something, but yeah, overall, there's not much that I would change here. For the bow, also really not much to say here. I actually don't have Mastery 20, I have Mastery 18 on the bow right now. Mainly, I'm using the bow to shoot the scorpions a few times and use all of the abilities safely from range without being locked in animations too long like you would be with Rapid Shot. So I can dodge away when there's the Sandworm popping up under me. And yeah, otherwise it's used for Stam Break and that's it. So yeah, very, very standard stuff. Or I guess not so standard because Evasive Tactics is down here and also things have changed a little bit in how things are played. But I'm not the one going for headshots on the Sandworm, so for me this kind of stuff here is relevant. That's for the bow users that are actually up on the platforms maybe. So far I'm very happy with how the Sandworm turned out. I really like the difficulty level that we have now. It's a lot more challenging. It's actually something very, very fun where you have to coordinate well. Obviously the downside of that is that it's not very accessible for pugs. I think this is something that is mainly reserved for coordinate groups to some degree at least. I'll do more attempts on Twitch TV/DukeSloth tomorrow, or later today rather. So if you're interested in seeing that, then consider following me there. And also consider subscribing, clicking the bell here if you want to hear more about the new season. Of course, the full Sandworm guide is coming, as well as some gold making guides surrounding the Sandworm and everything else that's going on. And plenty of other stuff surrounding the new season that may be of interest for you. If you want to see the training tips early, then you can hop over to my Patreon, where I post them much earlier usually. Thanks to my patrons who already support me there, and thank you for watching. DukeSloth out.